Last week, a friend of mine sent me a video of Alex Hormozy speaking with Logan Paul, and they were talking about discipline. And I can't even remember what Logan Paul said specifically about discipline. He came up with some sort of definition, and then Alex Hormozy tried to break that definition and succeeded quickly because the example he gave was that do you need to be disciplined? Uh, yeah, because I think Logan Paul said something like, "It's discipline is something you do every day," something like that. And Alex Hormozy said, "Well, do you need to be disciplined to have sex?" And he was like, "No." And he goes, "Then it's not something that you do every day. Discipline is something that you do every day, regardless of whether you want to or not." And that got me to look into the etymology. So I went to Google and I started to have a little dig into it, and it was quite interesting what I found. So I'm going to share that with you today. And then there's that second word in the title of this video, because I know what I'm going to call it: discipline and mortification. So if you go on Google, try this and just Google discipline meaning. And then if you scroll down, there's a little show more button. And if you click that, it's going to show you this little chain of a few boxes of where the word discipline comes from. And there's to learn, there's instruction, knowledge, and right at the bottom, at the end result, there's mortification and scourge. So I looked into those words as well, and then that led me into what I'm going to describe to you as this process. So the word discipline, where does it come from? Let's start there, and then we're going to get to some exercises that you can run through yourself to help you become a little bit more disciplined and start to be a little bit more aware. It's been helping me since I tried this out. And yeah, let's do that. So, discipline. Latin, discere, means to learn. This is the root of the word. Discipulus, student, follower. So we've got to learn, student, follower, disciplina, instruction, training, rule of life. Rule of life. In the 1st to 3rd century AD, it was used by Cicero, Seneca, and early Christians to mean education, knowledge, method. So we have this instruction, this training, this learning, because that's where disciple comes from. Is if you're a disciple, you're someone who's following the example of someone else or a certain instruction, a line of instruction. In the 12th century, so nearly 1,000 years later, Old French discipline, meaning instruction, moral training, and self control. So it's interesting how it starts to develop and sort of evolve the meaning for this word. And we start getting a bit more into this moral question and this idea of controlling the self, not just following the instruction, but controlling the self in such a way that is to take away any moral causes that might result in you stepping off of that instruction. So it's interesting how morality comes into it, but let's keep going and then we'll wrap it up in a minute. So 1200 AD Middle English, instruction, correction, training. Early monks would use it to mean discipline, meaning training the soul through restraint. So it's not, they weren't originally thinking of it as training one's body or training one's mind. They were thinking of training the spirit, training the soul, which I guess is a little different from spirit. So they're getting quite deep, obviously, the monks. 13th to 14th century, meaning expands penitential correction, punishment for learning. So now it's expanded into to include this punishment aspect. We've got the soul, we've got morality, we've got instruction, we've got training, and now there's a punishment element as well. Okay, so that's discipline. Mortification. Mortificare, to make dead. That's Latin, to make dead. And that was the moment that the light bulbs dinged on for me, where what I was already starting to feel was those are the parts of myself that need to die. So if you have a specific line of instruction, you work out your process, your schedule for the day, and you can see each and every task. And if you try to plug every single gap throughout the entire day, if you haven't done this, give this a go. Get yourself a schedule and make sure that every single action, every second of every minute of the entire day, 24/7, there is something. You have plugged every single gap. So there's always something that you could be doing, that you probably should be doing, that as a disciple of whatever it is, the line of instruction you're following, you have activities all through the day of what you should be doing to further your mastery of whatever that discipline is. Then any place you're stepping off of that path, those are the places where, and this is the what came to me, was that if you are in that path, you chose to set the schedule, but for some reason you've decided to step off the schedule of what you already planned, you already decided and agreed was the best thing for you to do. Why are you not doing that? And that right there is the identity. That's the perspective. That identity, whatever the identification is that made you decide, I want to do this now, but I wanted to do something else earlier, but now this I wants to do something else. What if it's not the same I? What if it's a different character? It's not the character we're trying to create. It's a character that's antithetical to the character we're trying to create. Well, now I'm in that character and I'm speaking as that character. I'm looking around as that character. I'm acting as that character, taking actions that are not in alignment with that other character that I'm trying to generate, that I'm trying to manifest with every thought, every word, every action. That character that is stepping off, that decides, you know what, I'm going to go against this discipline line of instruction, that is the version of you that you need to mortify, that you need to die from. From mors, death, facere, to make dead. So you make it dead, not kill. There's a difference. Maybe there isn't. I don't know. You tell me. Appears in the Vulgate Bible, Romans 8:13. Put to death the deeds of the body. Okay, so maybe this is a clue about this other character. If it's not us, what if it's our body? And then that links back to what the monks were saying, that it's the bodily restraint. Your body has desires. It has urges and wants and needs. It has needs, but has other things that will make you think they'll feel like needs, but they're actually not. You don't need them, but in the perspective of the body, you're going to feel like you need it. That's what it's going to present itself like. You need to get that extra rest and sleep in a little later and not get up early like you said you would. 1380, Middle English, mortification, subduing flesh and passions. And then we get this word passion. So that also links into that monk idea of, being a sinner and pursuing your bodily passions. When you get a passion, and a passion can be like a fire, I've heard some people say, and I do think it's true. They can be quite hot. You'll feel them sort of heat up. And a passion can burn very brightly, or it can, cool off. And so at some point, as you're going through your daily schedule, you'll feel a bodily urge, and then that will heat up and it will feel quite strong. It's a conflagration. Something is moving internally. And then what usually happens then is that feeling will very quickly go up into the mind. It might have been happening for a while before you finally get the thought, I want to sleep in. I want to get a snack. I want to this, I that, I whatever. I. It's all in a identification. And that is what I would describe as your attention getting sucked into this one facet of your ego essentially, but of that bodily desire. And then from that perspective, you're looking out of the world and you're going to start to see things from that perspective, not from the perspective you were in when you wrote the schedule originally. So you're already in a different character, a different mode. You've got different objectives now, different attitudes, different thoughts, different feelings, totally different person. Meaning, die from what disobeys truth. Shouldn't we all want to die from that which is untrue? If I'm in a perspective and the thoughts I'm having are not true when I'm in that perspective, I need to get out of that perspective and be in a perspective where the thoughts I'm having are true. And not just the conscious thoughts, but the unconscious thoughts, the thoughts that arise from my underlying beliefs, the things, the places I set my weight on. When I built my house, I laid my foundation stones on certain beliefs, like that getting up at 5 a.m. would be good for me because of all the beliefs, like, the sun is going to rise fairly soon. So I want to be following the sunshine because when the sun's out, I get more energy. I want to wake up at that time because I have a certain amount of hours in the night that I'm sleeping, and I go to bed at a certain time, and I believe my body needs a certain amount of hours. So you have all these beliefs, you have all this underlying data that you're going to act as if it's true, and then anything that disagrees with that data, I need to analyze and I need to weigh it and go, is this true or is this a lie? Is this delusion? And if it's a delusion or a lie, I'm going to discard it. And that which is true will remain. And there's more to this, so let's get through the definition. So, die from what disobeys truth. Monastic reasoning, you discipline the body to mortify the ego. Learning equals dying from resistance. So in the discipline, in following this line of instruction, chances are you're not going to follow it perfectly the very first time that you lay it out. You'll make some sort of mistake. Something will take longer than you thought it would. There'll be some other obstacle you didn't think about that you encounter that means you had to skip over this other thing that you had planned or whatever it is. So you're going to encounter all these obstacles. The discipline is learning to overcome the obstacles without giving into them and to continue on the line of instruction until that line of instruction can be followed as tightly as possible, with as little deviation from truth as possible. Mortification gives purpose to discipline. Discipline, this is my chat GPT coming out with some of this. Discipline trains, mortification transforms. ChatGPT always does that. This isn't this, this is that. This isn't that, this is this. And it'll do that kind of language. I've had that with some people recently writing speeches where I read through and I can just see from the language it's really obvious. It's ChatGPT talking. And not to get too much off on this tangent, but it's kind of interesting because it will use the techniques and the things that are widely regarded as being really good techniques to have in a speech. And yet when you read it, it feels so fake and there's no message behind it. It's just fancy words. And it's not about the words, it's about what the person feels. To mortify the flesh. Da, da, da. Scourge, okay. And then scourge, Old French escorgiere, 12th century. Vulgar Latin, excorrigiere, to whip, correct. 12th century, 1200s. Sorry, that'll be the 13th century. Middle English scourge, a whip for punishment, to flog. So, as you're going through your day, if you feel yourself stepping off the path, if only you had some monastic guide, some really aggressive monk standing there to whip your toes as they begin to teeter off the edge of the narrow path, and you had some sort of way of correcting yourself. And I like the idea of the whip, and how I would use it is that anytime my thoughts start to go into I want to whatever the temptation is, I'll try to whip it away. I'll try to take away the oxygen that is fueling that fire of that passion, which is my attention. If I can take the attention away, then nothing gets consumed. That conflagration doesn't get out of control. So whip the attention back onto track. In the 13th to 14th century, a chastisement sent by God, a means of purification. So the chastisement sent by God, if it's just by yourself, it's just having the awareness of just seeing it. You know, we all have a conscience. We all have a little voice inside us that tells us if we're doing something wrong or right. And we can make all this complicated schedule and we could follow it and record ourselves reading it so we can follow the process step by step and visualize it every morning, every night, and all that kind of stuff. But even without that, you've got that conscience, that little voice inside you as you're going through the schedule. When you start to teeter off, if you look at the feeling, if you look at the bodily desire, perhaps it's much simpler than we think it is. If we just were aware of exactly what it is we're feeling, we can see the lie, the delusion in it. I actually had to sit and write out all my mortifications, all the things I wanted to die from. I had to write out all the things that were taking me off the schedule that I keep doing, like staying up late or sleeping in or eating bad food or not doing the deep work sessions that I planned or whatever it is. And so I made that list and I wrote every time, if I tried to think in my memory of, and it's every day, there'll be something I do every day to come off the schedule. So there's always plenty of stuff. And then when I looked at it, I realized there's a desire, there's some reason, some benefit that I think I'm going to get from sleeping in. Like, oh, I'll get more energy, so I'm a bit more focused for whatever it is I need to do that day. So there's a perceived benefit, and I write that out. So that's why I'll drink my coffee or whatever, so I can be more alert in lessons. And then there's a thing that I'm avoiding, some sort of fear, this thing that I'm worried is going to happen if I don't have a coffee. I'll be all sleepy and dozy and confused and whatever. It sounds so silly when I'm just saying it out loud, and it looks silly when you write it on the page. And what was interesting was when I went through everything on the list and I looked at the perceived benefit and the perceived avoidance, the thing that I would avoid, I see that, for example, the coffee, the thing I was desiring to get the energy, the vitality, the alertness, that's actually what I'm losing by doing that thing, by drinking the coffee, because then the next day I need another one or whatever it is, or in a few hours I get some sort of dump and I need some more. And it just does that vicious cycle, down regulation. So every desire that I was trying to get, I was actually taking that away from myself. Every perceived thing that I was avoiding, the fear I was trying to put off, that was actually what I was creating for myself. And so I looked at this list and I was like, that's kind of funny. Like every time I sleep in, I just feel more tired actually in the day. I don't feel more rested. And then every time when I'm trying to avoid being tired and stuff later on in the day, that's actually what ends up happening. And then if I feel like I need energy for because I'm on an empty stomach or whatever, and I'll get the chocolate bar because it'll give me that glucose rush or whatever it is, and then it will just do the opposite. So you're looking at this list. Try this out. Maybe pause the video, try it out. I mean, it's already a little bit too late. I've already said it. When you look at the list, you're going to see every perceived benefit is actually what you're losing, and every perceived thing that you're avoiding, that you're trying to prevent happening, that's actually what you're creating. And then it hit me that every time you go into one of those bodily desires, one of those passions, the mind is dangling a carrot in front of you of a perceived benefit, and it's threatening you with a stick from behind. So you got the carrot and the stick method, and in that perspective, you're actually in an inversion. It's the opposite. And it's just like when you look in a mirror and you see some writing on your shirt. And when you stand in front of the mirror, you'll see it's backwards. It's been inverted. It's flipped. And I realized that's what's happening. Is we go into this inversion state, and we're looking from this inverted perspective where the things we think we're going to get, that's actually what we'll lose. And the things we think we're going to avoid, that's actually what we create. And then I looked, because I looked at the reasoning. When you get all the positives, the desires, the fears, and then you look at the reasoning, because I would write a reason for each one. And in that, I would find some sort of underlying belief, about the benefit, that I'll get this benefit. And that was a mistaken belief. And that's where I'm leaning weight on a wobbly crutch. I'm building my house on a bit of sand. And it's only going to be a matter of time until that bites me in the arse. And it's in all these myriad of little ways. There's the big obvious ones, and then there's all throughout the day just having a thought. And having a thought that is negative, that is argumentative, or that is reminding you of some embarrassing thing that happened decades ago. There is some sort of temptation in the thought, and it's the carrot and stick method again. There's a perceived benefit. Oh, if I think through this now, that will give me some sort of benefit, like with an argument. Oh, then I'll know what to say if I ever get in that argument. And then what I avoid, I'll avoid being humiliated if I ever get in that argument. And that's exactly what you will create for yourself, actually. It's the opposite. It's an inversion. So here you are on this discipline path. Every time you are tempted to step off, realize that you've gone into a perspective. If you're perceiving a thought that has a benefit to it of why you would step off the path, if you pause and just question, well, would that actually lead me to that thing? Well, yes, in the short term, it would. What was that? In the short term? What about the long term? What about tomorrow? Oh, well, I guess, yeah, tomorrow if you have the chocolate bar, then you'll have the extra calories and you'll be a bit slower, and it's a bit more poison in your system. There's a bit more sugar for your brain, and your dopaminergic systems aren't working as well, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, okay, so that thing actually leads to my destruction. But in the very short term, in that tunnel vision, when the horse blinders come on, when I go into that very narrow, limited perspective, not the expanded, sort of higher self perspective where I'm limitless and I can overcome anything. Instead, I'm in this narrow perspective, and now I need the chocolate bar to get through, or whatever it is, or I need another coffee before my first lesson. That's a common one for me. I want to get that caffeine fix before I come into lesson. Because then I'll be more alert, I'll be more energized and all this stuff. But that's actually what I'm depriving myself of every time I do that. Because then I'm relying on all these external things instead of just finding the exuberance in myself, finding the enthusiasm about what it is I'm talking about. There was somewhere I was going with that, but I'll get there in a minute. The object act, yeah, so you got this whip. Do you know what? I don't need anything else from here. Okay. So this led me on to that inverted perspective. What is that exactly? If it's not the ego, if it's not this idea of what's right and what's wrong, what should and shouldn't be happening, what I do and do not need. And so that the ego is a mirror image of the higher self, that limitless, powerful being that you could become. And then I was thinking a little bit more about this, and I got into this whole red shift, blue shift. It's positive, negative. It's not all random and higgledy-piggledy, or you make these choices and all this kind of stuff, and you end up being the sum total of your choices. You do end up being the sum total of your choices, but what you're looking at on the screen right now, this image of me, this is currently this guy. And again, and maybe I'm going into ego here, that I'm getting embarrassed because of the truth, which is that this, what you're looking at, is the sum of all my decisions, which were either moving me towards the manifestation of my potential or moving me towards the manifestation of my least potential. The maximum possible potential I have right now, which is depleting with every second that goes by that I don't act on it. And then the worst possible version of myself. So up here I've got like this deified, godly version of just infinite power. And then down here I've got this like little golem gremlin version of me. And you can see them both right now, merged into one. Every decision you make that's on the path, the disciplined path, the path towards that realization of your absolute potential, which means that every decision you make is the best decision you can make at the time to give you the best possible outcome. Leading to life, every choice that's leading to life, to more limitlessness, to expansion, to growth. And every decision that is off the discipline path, however small, even just the decision to go into a thought for a few seconds, to just imagine having a better retort to that person or whatever, or what you would do now if you were in that situation you were in 10 years ago that was really embarrassing. Because there's a perceived benefit that by thinking about that, well, now you'll know what to do for the next time. That's worthwhile, right? And there's a distinct feeling between the two. Like, just on that. This path over here, it's going to feel like a contraction, like tension, like pain, humiliation, embarrassment, shrinking of possibilities. And over here, it's going to feel like an opening, a relaxation, a release, an expansion. So as you're going through the day, you don't need to always be thinking, "Oh, what's the next right thing I need to do? And is it this thing? Is it that thing? Is it?" And then if you're thinking on the level of mind, the problem cannot be solved on the level of mind because it's a mind problem. The mind is a survival machine. It's going to look at everything like it's a nail. It's a hammer, and everything is a nail, which means that everything is an obstacle to survival to the mind. But to the higher self, it's just, what is that next right thing to do? And how do we maintain a perfect peace? There should be no need to excite ourselves and get all upset and frustrated and angry and all this stuff mean, what does that feel like? Does that feel like expansion and growth? No, it will feel like contraction. If you're getting annoyed that you said you were going to go to this fitness class and it gets to that time and you're like, oh, I just want to stay here and just veg out on the sofa and watch TV, whatever it is. And you're, oh, what does that feel like? Oh, I should go to the class. Oh, and you can see on people's faces like, oh, I know I should do this. It's like they're squeezing, they're contracting. That doesn't mean that if you go and do the difficult thing, you're not going to get this sort of squeezing and contracting, but it's the decision, the moment of decision where you're not in any great pain right now. You're just about to decide to go and do something painful or to go and do something comfortable. And one is going to lead to life and the other is going to lead to your withering. And actually, what put me onto this distinction of feelings was waking up in the morning. And have you ever done this when you want to get up really early, or it's too early for you to get up, but you need to go to the bathroom, you need to go pee, and you're lying in bed and you're actually busting for a pee, but you don't want to get up. And so as you're lying there, you start thinking about getting up, and you sort of imagine yourself getting up and going to the toilet, and you're walking all through this, and you can actually even trick yourself that you're doing it. And then you realize at some point, oh no, I'm still in bed. Hopefully before you wet yourself. But that feeling when you're just lying there thinking about, should I get up? It's like, oh, it's so comfortable. It's, oh, you just want to go to sleep. That is what death feels like. I've not died, but I've heard stories from people who've died, for a few minutes or however long it was. And one of them was somebody talking about freezing to death. And there's an interesting thing where a person will become they'll start to feel warm. They go from shivering like this to then suddenly they start to relax a bit more. They start to feel warm. And the darkness and the cold and the wind is just getting a bit quieter. And they start to feel this kind of lightness and this ease and this warmth washing over them. And that is what dying feels like when you're freezing to death. And that moment where you go, oh, I'll just get that chocolate bar and I'll just get that coffee or whatever. It's like that. Right? That's what death feels like. That's the energy of death. And that's weird and sort of harsh language, but it's just my artistic sort of expression of it. Take it or don't take it, do with it what you will. But try this. Make a list of everything that you're doing that is taking you off of your promises, off that disciplined path that you're promising yourself you're going to follow. In the moment you are about to step off the path, look at what that temptation is. What is the thought promising you? What is the feeling that if you had it, you'd feel better? There's some sort of feeling of lack that you have. You are lacking energy. You're lacking knowledge. You're lacking time, or whatever it is that will be the justifiable excuse. And this is the thing about the mind. It will just go from excuse to excuse to excuse to excuse to excuse until it finds the one that works, the one that gets you to go, oh, okay then, and give in. And in that moment that you give in, if you do give in, notice the feeling, that warm, comfortable feeling. And think about the guy at the top of Everest who's there shaking. I read this, it was an Ant Middleton book. I can't remember what it was called. Maybe it was his second book or something. And then when he's on the top of the mountain, he started to freeze, and that's what he said it felt like. And he started to wake up and he kept just taking his gloves off and on slowly to pass the time to keep himself awake so he didn't freeze to death. And maybe that's what we need to do. We need to do something just to wake ourselves up just a little bit, just enough to be able to make the right decision. Because just like lying in bed thinking about getting up, when you're not actually getting up, you're just still lying in bed, it's your mind starts to play this delusion, is running this track. Your mind is what is going to give you all the reasons and justifications and excuses and temptations that are going to keep you there. And it's just looking for the right one, just the one that works. And then it's, oh, well, yes, of course it was that thing. It was that you really needed. Discipline and mortification.